6 months ago, everything was different. They'd been inseparable, the type of pair that made others roll their eyes while secretly wishing they had what Electra and Will had. They met in a dive pub in Silver Lake, where she was performing a set about the ridiculousness of dating apps, and he laughed harder than anybody else in the room. He bought her a whiskey sour following, and they talked until the bartender booted them out at closing time. He was a musician, a guitarist with higher goals than his financial account, and she was a comic with a chip on her shoulder and a gift for turning tragedy into comedy. She thought they fit together like puzzle pieces. However, Los Angeles has a way of unraveling things. The city was a kaleidoscope of ambition and betrayal, where ambitions came at a cost and loyalty was a currency that could not be taken lightly. Electra had witnessed it in the industry. Friends stabbing each other in the back for a guest appearance on a late-night program, lovers selling secrets for a competitive advantage. She'd always convinced herself that she and Will were unique, and that their love was a fortress against the city's tumult. Until she discovered what he had done. It all began with a rumor. A murmur in the green room of a comedy club in West Hollywood. A buddy of a friend had seen Will at a Hills party, where he was chatting with a producer known for launching careers and shattering hearts. Electra laughed it off at first. Will was charming, a natural flirt, yet he always returned home to her. Then the texts began. Screenshots from an unknown number, fuzzy photographs of Will with his arm around the producer, his smile too big, her hand too low. Electra confronted him, her voice crisp but wavering, and he denied it with such sincerity that she nearly believed him. Almost. Then 2 nights ago, the truth struck like a grenade. Another comedian, who Electra barely knew, had approached her after a gig and told her everything. Will had been proposing the producer a project, a music comedy hybrid, using Electra's name, material, and contacts without her knowledge. He'd been meeting with this woman for weeks, passing off Electra's jokes as his own and fabricating stories about their friendship to make himself appear more marketable. The betrayal was not just personal, but also professional, a violation of everything Electra had established for herself in this cutthroat town. She had been in a stupor for the last 48 hours, alternating between wrath and numbness. She had canceled her engagements, ignored her agent's calls, and sat at her apartment, replaying every moment of their relationship, looking for the flaws she had overlooked. Now that Will was sitting across from her, the moment of truth had arrived. She couldn't keep avoiding it any longer. Electra, Will whispered, his tone low and almost imploring. Can we just talk about this? She raised her eyes to meet his, and the words she had been holding back flowed out, each one purposeful and sharp. Will, you used me. You took my work, my life, and sold it. She hesitated, her breath seizing and her voice lowering to a whisper. I trusted you with everything. Will flinched, unclasping his fists and raking his fingers over his hair. It wasn't like that, he continued, but his voice had lost its conviction. I tried to help us both. You are so talented, Elle, but you're stuck in these small clubs, and I thought. You thought? She interrupted him, her voice rising. You believed you could leverage my material and name to obtain a deal? You thought you'd lie to me and go behind my back, but what? I'd just be fine with it. I didn't lie, he said, but the words were hollow even for him. I was about to inform you. I needed to get my foot in the door. And your products are so wonderful that I knew they would sell. Electra laughed, producing a loud, bitter sound that echoed across the small room. This is my thing. My life. Well, you don't get to pick what I provide. You don't get to take it and call it your own. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his expression sincere. I love you, Elle. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was trying to build something for us. She shook her head, tears welling in the corners of her eyes. Stealing from someone does not demonstrate your affection for them. You do not love someone by betraying their confidence. She stood, her legs wobbly, and crossed to the window, seeking space and air. The metropolis spread out below, a sparkling tangle of lights and falsehoods. She'd come here to pursue a passion, make people laugh, and carve out a space for herself. And Will had turned that dream into something horrible. I'm done, she replied, turning to face him. The statement seemed final, like a door slamming shut. I am leaving LA. I can't stay here after this. Will's face crumpled, and his hands reached out as if to pull her back. Elle, no. You cannot just leave. This city is your home and career. My career, she demanded. The one you attempted to hijack? The one you thought you could use to propel your own success. She took a step closer to him, her voice steady and fueled by clarity she hadn't felt in days. I am going back to Chicago. I need to start over somewhere where I know the ground beneath my feet is safe. Will stood with his hands outstretched, desperation in his eyes. Please, Electra. This is something we can fix. I'll make things right, I swear. She took a good look at him and saw a stranger. The man she loved had vanished, replaced by someone who saw her as a stepping stone. You can't fix this, she stated softly. You broke it. She turned away and took her duffel bag from the corner of the room. She'd already packed the essentials. Clothes, her favorite notebook, and a worn copy of Bossy Pants that Tina Fey had signed for her at a book signing years ago. The rest could stay. She didn't need reminders of her life, city, or betrayal. Electra, Will said, his voice breaking. Don't do this. She paused at the door, her hand on the knob, and looked back at him one last time. Goodbye, Will, she said, and the words felt like a release, like shedding a skin that no longer fit. The drive to the airport was a blur. Los Angeles slipped past her window, a city of palm trees and broken promises. She didn't cry, not yet. There would be time for that later, in the quiet of a new city, a new life. For now she focused on the road ahead, the hum of the engine, the weight of her decision settling into her bones. She was leaving behind everything she'd built, but she was also leaving behind the lies, the betrayal, the weight of a love that had turned toxic. Chicago was waiting, a city of cold winters and warm hearts, where she could rebuild, rewrite her story. She didn't know what came next, but for the first time in days she felt like she could breathe. The plane ticket in her pocket was a promise, a fresh start, a chance to reclaim her voice, her laughter, her life. And as the city lights faded below her, Electra closed her eyes and let herself imagine a future where trust wasn't a luxury, but a given. The flight was long, and the hum of the engines lulled her into a restless sleep. She dreamed of the stage, the spotlight hot on her face, the laughter of a crowd washing over her like a wave. In her dream she was alone but not lonely. She was enough just as she was. When she woke, the plane was descending, the Chicago skyline coming into view, a jagged line of steel and glass against the dawn. She smiled, a small tentative thing, and whispered to herself, "Here we go." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of adjustment. Chicago was different from a grittier, more honest, with a wind that cut through her jacket and reminded her she was alive. She found a small apartment in Wicker Park, a place with creaky floors and a view of a brick wall, but it was hers. She started performing again, small gigs at first, open mics where the crowds were sparse but enthusiastic. Her material was raw, unpolished, drawn from the ache of betrayal and the spark of resilience. The audiences loved it, and slowly, she began to feel like herself again. She didn't talk about Will, not at first. But he lingered in the edges of her jokes, a shadow she couldn't quite shake. One night at a comedy club in Logan Square, she told the story. Not the whole truth, but a version of it, wrapped in humor and sharp edges. The crowd roared, and she felt a weight lift, as if by naming the pain she'd taken its power away. Months turned into a year, and Electra's name started to spread again. She got a call from a booker in New York, then another from a producer in Toronto. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. Chicago had given her a second chance, a place to rebuild without the ghosts of LA haunting her every step. She made new friends, comedians, writers, artists who saw her for who she was, not what she could do for them. She dated cautiously, learning to trust again in small, careful steps. Will reached out once, a late-night email that she read but didn't respond to. He was sorry, he said, and he was trying to make it on his own now. She wished him well, silently, but she didn't write back. Some doors once closed stayed that way. On a cold February night, Electra stood on a stage in Chicago's Second City. The same place where legends like Tina Fey and Amy Poehler had honed their craft. The room was packed, the energy electric. She gripped the mic, her heart steady, her voice strong. "So I left LA," she began, and the crowd leaned in, ready for the punchline. Turns out, the only thing harder than breaking into comedy is breaking up with someone who thinks your life is their audition tape. The laughter was loud, cathartic, and for the first time in a long time, Electra felt whole. She was no longer the woman who'd left LA in pieces. She was Electra, sharp-tongued and unbroken, with a story to tell and a stage to tell it on. And as the spotlight faded and the crowd cheered, she knew she'd made the right choice. Chicago wasn't just a city. It was her home, her heart, her second act. And she was just getting started.